Previously on the Embracing the Journey podcast.
Did you suffer an identity crisis as well?
All my life, I spent a lot of time comparing, competing, trying to blend in to certain groups instead of blending out. And I had to have the courage to just be who I am and be okay with it. Know your vision, know who you are, and trust your capabilities and your capacity to get it done. Nobody can stop you from walking through any door that you're assigned to walk through.
Woo! Welcome back to another episode of Embracing the Journey podcast.
The real question is, what should you be doing with your life? And is this person qualified to tell you what you should be doing with your life? Because they may be in a lane that's not even in congruency with your vision or what it is that you're trying to do.
And you spoke on this last episode. I've noticed that I even seek validation from people that don't have the qualifications to tell me right from wrong. And oftentimes I put myself in this space where I'm like, why did I even do that? Because now I'm delayed a few hours or a few days trying to reprogram my brain to tell myself, well, that's not actually true. How could one navigate that space without completely stonewalling the individual, cutting out these individuals, but also being able just to navigate freely around them? What would be some helpful tips on that, you think?
Number one, I would tell you to know yourself. Nobody knows you like you know you. So we appreciate help. You should have mentors and coaches and people in your life to help you get where you want to go. But you should also have a very strong sense of who you are that helps you in making those decisions. And then I would tell you to trust yourself. A lot of times we reach for that external validation because we don't really trust in our ability to make the right decision that we need to make. And then you need to not only trust yourself, but trust yourself that you know deep down what's best for you. And that everybody doesn't know what's best for you because sometimes people have a different motive or intention for doing the different things or even saying the certain things that they say, and being able to discern between what's really authentic with that and what has a motive behind it so that you can make the decision you need to make.
I wanted to talk to you about authenticity, and I'm glad you brought that up. What does that word mean? Because I feel like if we were to remove social media, authenticity, algorithm, like the high use of organic, not when we're referring to food, I think that would be wiped from most people's vocabulary. So the question is being my true authentic self, how does that transfer into the energy that I'm actually putting out, where I don't look like I'm actually trying to be so different than what? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that.
Well, first of all, you have to understand what authenticity is not. Authenticity is not a brand. It's not a logo. It's not a trademark. It's not a slogan. It's not a marketing package. Authenticity is dealing with the essence of who you are as a person. Do what I project to the outside world agree with what's going on in my inner reality? Are they congruent? Is it the same? If we were to put a camera on a person for 24 hours, would we see the same thing? Ooh. Or would it be two different images?
Ooh.
And if you can't really honestly answer that question, then you're not really living an authentic life. And so in anything that I go to do, the first question for me is, what is my intention? And second question for me, is this even in alignment with who I am and what I want to put out into the world? And for most people, they haven't even taken the time to really consider that.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Soft, chewy, sour. The gummy experience that you've been searching for. New from Sour Punch.
So the authenticity, that was deep. That was deep when you talked about if a camera were to follow you around for 24 hours, will we see the same person? 100% no. And I think that goes for everybody. Let me ask you this. I've always wanted to ask you this. Do you think that when people encounter other people for the first time, everybody's interviewing? Don't shake your head. Talk to me about it.
Yeah. I mean, you are interviewing people when you meet them, but it's even deeper than that. I wrote about this in a book, but every relationship in our lives, good, bad, or indifferent, is a mirror of an internal conversation that we're having with ourselves. And so a lot of times we encounter people, we meet people, and it's like, okay, I connect with this person or I don't connect with that person. I think the real question is, why do I connect with this person and why don't I connect with this person? Because if we really ask that question, it brings me to one of the questions that changed my life. And the question was, what is so broken in me that this is attractive or acceptable for my life? And that gets to the core of, am I really living an authentic life to begin with? Or is this another narrative that I've scripted based on something that's healed or unresolved on the inside of me?
I love that. I love that. Wow. I've been in tons of conversations with people that won't do something because it's not authentic to their brand. Or, no, that doesn't make sense for my brand. But when a camera's not in front of their face or when the laptop's not set up, everything that you said seems to not be true on how you act if the camera was on. The other day, I was laying in bed and I was watching the Kardashians. I'm not under the impression that what we see on TV is who they are in real life. I know that it's for TV, but we've given power to individuals and idolize individuals. And I'm not taking away from that. I love how they market. I love everything that they do. They are phenomenal. But we're watching them live their regular life. Some people are inspired by it. Some people are in anger and rage about it. And other people are like, well, why can't I do that? I find it fascinating, right? That we're looking at everyday people do everyday things. And we're asking ourselves, why not me? But after we ask ourselves that, we don't do anything about it. And we consume more and learn less. And then consume more and then continue to learn less. And then we walk around with this energy like the world owes us something, right? I've never been under the impression that one person can have something that I can't, and vice versa. I've always been under the impression that if you want it, you'll do everything in your power to get what it is that you want. Nothing will hold you back. Nothing will get in your way. And I want to tell you this quick story. A person reached out to me on social media not too long ago. And I respond to DMs most times. So a person reaches out to me on Instagram. And she was like, you have a really interesting story. So we're going back and forth. And she said, what was one of your hardest struggles? What was one thing that you had overcome? What was like a personal goal? And I said, I've always been in shape. I've always been in great shape. She was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. And I said, no. So I put on 40 extra pounds one season because I wanted to see how hard it would be for me to get back to competition weight. And I'm saying this in a space where I felt safe and comfortable, and she completely took it as disrespect. And I couldn't understand for the life of me what it was that I said that, ruffled your feathers. But She was using words like, well, you had the privilege to overeat and then work out. You had the privilege to not have a typical job and to be able to get back to your fitness goals. How do you think it would make me feel knowing that I have health issues, that I can't do that? And I said, but are we operating under the impression that I don't have health issues? Well, you're a physical, like you have a physical gift. And I said, well, what would that gift be? Well, you're like naturally lean. And I said, well, what about the extra 40 pounds I put on? And I found myself in this circular conversation that was leading nowhere. Long story short, she gets upset. She ends up blocking me. And then I'm left in like this thought like, well, what did I actually do? The reason why I bring that up is, I guess the confusion is why ask me the question if you already had a premeditated version of who I was and how you were going to respond to anything that came out of my mouth? Have you been in spaces like that?
Yes, a lot of times people operate under assumptions. And I always tell people that assumptions are the lowest form of reality. And so it's very accommodating to be an assumptuous person because it does not require you to take responsibility for your own life or the decisions that you make. So as long as I can assume that this goal is unattainable or this is unrealistic or, you know, this person has been given some advantage in life that you haven't been given, then it takes the spotlight off of why you're not where you want to be and why things are the way they are in your life so that you don't have to make any other changes that you need to make.
Jamelle, I got to ask. I need you to talk to us about accountability because we live in a society where that is virtually non-existent anymore. And what you just said, that was the word that kept popping up in my head. What does accountability mean to you?
Accountability to me means taking 100% responsibility for your life, your decisions, your actions, your outcomes. It means that there's no place to point the blame or to point the finger or to hold anything outside of yourself responsible for a result or a lack of results in your life.
But how can I do that if everything in my life happens to me and not because of me?
Well, then we have to deal with what I would call an unbalanced or an unrenewed mind that you need to address because that's deeply rooted in a belief system that you have. And if you don't correct that belief system, it's just going to keep playing out in your life in different ways. And the tragedy would be to get to the end of your life and to hold everybody accountable for why you didn't do the thing that you should have done with your own life.
I feel like I'm going to try to build this parallel, but I hear it more now than ever in my life. If I don't own my accountability, I'm going to say it. Does the word narcissist quickly follow that subject in that sentence?
I think it could, because ultimately at the end of the day, if I'm not going to take accountability or responsibility for my life, then it really shows that I idolize my opinion so much that I'm not willing to take any outside help or input or direction to make the necessary changes that I need to make in my life, which lets me know that my ego is driving me. And if my ego is driving me, then I'm ultimately going to crash and I'm going to get off course and not reach the destination that I want to reach.
In your expertise, what is a narcissist?
I think it's a person with an over inflated assessment of who they are. and the value that they provide to other people. In our minds, it's easy to convince ourselves of how valuable or significant or important we are. But I think that every person has to do what I call an internal audit, and you really have to change your vantage point and look outside of yourself and really see how much value you're providing to other people. And if you can't really answer that question properly, then maybe you're not providing the value that you think you are.
Yes, in the short term. Quickly, where does that scream insecurity? Is that where that stems from? Or do they actually believe the overinflation of who they are and the value that they actually bring to people?
Well, there are some people that do believe that. They're self-deceived, and the greatest deception is self-deception. And so to a person who is self-deceived, in their eyes, they do believe that they are that valuable and that important. But I always push back on those people, and I say,
Next week on the Embracing the Journey podcast.
Welcome back to Embracing the Journey podcast. I'm your host, Norris Frederick, and we are here with Jamelle.
a lot of times we tell ourselves that we can handle the truth, but most people don't have the capacity for the truth. And so when you really start to put the truth out there and a person is not ready to hear it, it's going to create a breakdown in that relationship. I think we live in a culture and a society that has defined truth as they want it to be and not as it is. And so I can have a conversation with 10 different people and every person is going to tell me something different about truth. Trust is the currency of relationships, and without it, you don't really have anything.
If you had an overall piece of advice to give, whether it's to the entrepreneurial world, consulting world, publishing world, whatever the situation may be personally, for a person that may be wanting to do what it is that you do, what would you tell them?